first selectmen meeting to order. If we could please rise and stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a full meeting today, so I'll get started right away. The first item that we have is our town administrator report, which will include a PowerPoint presentation of the first revenue projection for fiscal Y16 and audit engagement letter for the FY13 audit.
Can we sit out?
Do you want to?
Is there? Can I
Maybe
move?
the members of the board
Yeah.
find a better vantage point. I guess I should speak into this. Is it live? Okay. Well, let me just bring everyone up to date. Matt, our interim town accountant, has completed the first draft of the tax recap, which is required by the Department of Revenue. He has submitted it to the Springfield office. They've been on the telephone much of the day today and I think on Friday. And so our next step is to schedule a meeting with the Department of Revenue. They'll come here, take a look at the town's finances and offer any suggestions, and I would hope that they will leave and by saying that they think that the town is financially stable, because we think there is financial stability at this point, even though there's not much money to go around. So what I've done is to basically do a first draft of revenue for the coming fiscal year, fiscal 16. And in order to get some perspective, I've tried to put together actual numbers from 3 prior years, fiscal 12, 13, and 14, and also what we budgeted in the current year, and use that as a basis for some kind of judgment as to where we will be in the coming fiscal year. The revenue components for the town of Templeton can be divided into basically 5 different components. First of all, the tax levy. Tax levy itself is affected by 3 different components, which the way I've done it is I start with the prior year tax levy. That would be the levy limit. In this case, in fiscal 12, it was $6,645,260. The town took a 2.5% increase on that, which is what is legal under the tax cap, Prop 2.5. In addition to taking 2.5% increase, you're allowed to add in any new growth that has happened during the year, people doing additions or people building new houses and so forth, new businesses. And then lastly, you're allowed to add in general overrides, because that becomes a permanent increase in the tax base. No general overrides in 12 or 13, but going into fiscal 14, the levy was $7 million. The additional amount was $176. New growth of $53,377, and a $620,000 override in the fall of 2013, which gives us the levy limit. The levy limit in 214. And what you do for 215 is you start with that levy limit, so we just move it over to here. You do the 2.5%. You add any new growth or any amended new growth from the prior year, because sometimes the assessors are able to amend this number, and they're able to take into account, in fact, new growth from January until the end of the fiscal year, and any override. So in fiscal 15, we had only the 2.5% increase, However, this brings up the base considerably, because that goes into the base, that's 620. And so the levy limit is 8,097,000 in fiscal 15. We start over here with 8,097,000 times 2.5% adds $202,000. And in discussions with the deputy assessor today, she thinks that 35,000 in new growth is a reasonable figure. That's a judgment now, and this is where we get into the,
There's one other figure that you might consider, that because the advisory board did, is the snow and ice deficit spending we had put
Right.
into the.
I did put it in here. It's
okay.
down a little lower.
Oh, okay.
And so here's where, this is the difference. This is the dollar difference. It looks like in the coming year, from the tax levy, the town will get $237,442 in additional revenue. Now, the other components, debt exclusions and capital exclusions. You don't include these here because these go away after the debt exclusion is paid for. Capital exclusion typically 1 year, it goes away the next year. Debt exclusions for a longer period, typically 5 years or longer. And so I've added here the numbers from debt exclusion. These represent the additions from debt exclusions. And what tends to happen, what happens here is this also raises the levy for the coming year. So in fiscal 15, the debt exclusion added 787, and so the total, and this is what we call the maximum allowable levy, as opposed to the levy limit. Levy limit plus debt and capital exclusions comes down to 8,884,000, projecting 9,202,000 for fiscal 16, and that represents 318,125 in additional revenue for the town, based on, what are we doing here? Oh, for the town based on the tax levy. Now, the other components of revenue, state aid. I level funded state aid. Who knows what's going to happen? We'll have a new governor. I think the economy is better, but we're not sure how the legislature and the governor are going to divide up additional revenue. So I just level funded that. I think as time goes by, as we get towards the new year, we can tweak that number and make a judgment as to what we think it's going to be. Here's something worth noting. From fiscal 14 to fiscal 15, the amount of state aid actually went down. That's very rare. We all talk about state aid being cut, but the reality is they don't give us the same amount of increase that we expect, but typically there's increases. In this case, it actually went down by about $9,000. So it's risky to make any judgment there as to what it's going to be. So I just level funded that. And then in addition to that, we have local receipts. Now this is the money that the town gets from fees and charges and motor vehicle taxes and so forth. And the way I've set up the spreadsheet, this ties out to a second part of the spreadsheet. And this is really important because I'll show you here, the so-called breakout page. And in the breakout page, I've broken out the numbers that we get from the state or have gotten from the state for local aid or state aid. They call it the cherry sheet because back in the 30s, they ran out of white paper and they printed it on pink paper and sent it out to all the cities and towns, and so it's now called the cherry sheet. This is the big number here, the unrestricted general government aid. The town also gets reimbursement for veterans benefits and the exemptions for veterans and blind and elderly and state-owned lands. As you can see, they reduced the amount of contribution to state-owned lands, and again, it reflects a decrease there. In addition to the money that they give us that we can spend directly, they have so-called cherry sheet offsets. This is money that the town doesn't get into the general fund. It's money that goes directly to the public library and is spent directly by the library. So we can't include that in the general fund. I've included it here, but I also take it out on the other page. So it's in and then it comes out. Now here's the important area, and haven't really made a lot of firm decisions here, but these are all the fees and charges that the town receives. And this, by the way, is an area where, if we say that the financial record keeping wasn't so good, this is where things have been somewhat confused. Here's motor vehicle tax. It's obviously very important. I mean, we're looking at $900,000 next year. There again, what's the judgment for motor vehicle tax? In fiscal 14, we took in $948,000. The budget was $888. So cars are selling, and that means more tax. What's the judgment on that? Well, I put in 900, which is, I think, a conservative number. Although I fully expect that with cars selling, the economy improving some, it's probably going to be closer to here than here. These are the other areas where the town collects revenue. At the very bottom, you can see this is a mess. And this is where Matt and the Department of Revenue have been back and forth, and he basically is displaying this as they require. So this will keep us out of trouble. This number here, 242, this is MSBA money. This is the reimbursement that the town will get for MSBA, from MSBA. We haven't gotten any for the last few years, but, and I had, in addition to Cherry Sheet, I had their MSBA funding, and basically they said, no, we don't want you to do it separately like that. We want you to put it here in miscellaneous non-recurring. So that's where we put that money. This money here basically is the money contributed by the enterprise funds for Worcester County retirement, for health insurance, and other benefits that the town pays on their behalf, and we then are reimbursed. So I can go into that farther with the Board of Selectmen later on. Go back to the summary page, and all this kind of ties out. So I make the changes on the other pages, and it hyperlinks into here. In addition to state aid and local receipts, again, I'm trying to be conservative about that, $2.5 million. We have so-called available funds. Now, every town has a different set of available funds. Free cash, as you know, we don't want free cash into the budget anymore because it's unpredictable. So the town has gone from putting $696,000, went down to 189, went down to 94, and the last 2 years, no free cash. And I think the Board of Selectmen have determined that if we have free cash, which we will, that should be used for one-time purchases like capital items. That way you don't get into trouble. And I think it's important to note that the town has taken that much money out of its budget since fiscal 2012. The ambulance fund, this is something relatively new. These fees are collected. I was talking with the chief earlier. Some of these numbers from the earlier years need a little more work, although I think this is the first year that we took funds from the ambulance account and brought them into the general fund. 160, 180, and 180. Stabilization fund. Well, the town, is pulled money from the stabilization fund this year. 15.5, most of that came for the new town hall purposes. The overlay surplus, we have an overlay surplus, but the Department of Revenue won't let us use it for now. And then lastly, the electric department contribution. It was 100, 100, 150, and in the current fiscal year, if you take the contribution that they made, which we put into stabilization, plus the indirect contribution that they made for streetlights and for the town's electrical bill, it adds up to this amount. And so these are also important funds, but there's no real consistency from year to year. So here's what we do. We get the maximum allowable levy right here, and then state aid, local receipts, and available funds. We add them together, and that gives us total revenue. So we're projecting the total revenue for the town next year will be $13,368,000. That's $257,955 more than we have in the current year. Now, in addition to the new revenues that you get, we have to subtract out off the top certain expenses. Below the levy limit, well, we're not below the levy limit, so we don't have a number there. Cherry sheet offsets, that's what I was mentioning for the library. We add them in on one page, but we have to take them out because that doesn't become available in the town's general fund for us to spend. It becomes available for the library to spend directly. Cherry sheet charges. Now, this is always cute. I have another worksheet for that. The state not only gives us money, they take it away as well. The back of the cherry sheet, part 2 of the cherry sheet is where they take it from you. They give us $1 million, and they take, we're looking at, $50-some thousand. Sometimes they take it for mosquito control, but I don't see any numbers there on the cherry sheet for this. Air pollution districts, a modest amount. And the RMB surcharge is $12,000. And this is the important one, regional transit, $40,000. And so going back over here, because they take that automatically, you got to subtract that one out. Monty Tech assessment, we subtract out off the top. Narragansett assessment, we take out off the top. Any cherry sheet or overlay deficits we take. There was an overlay deficit that will have to be covered next year, so I put that in there, $18,000. Snow and ice deficit, we had a $51,000 snow and ice deficit that's coming out this year. It represents a snow and ice deficit from last winter. And unpaid bills, we'll have a number here. I asked Matt for the number. We don't have the number for fiscal 14 unpaid bills at this point, so that'll change over time. Contribution into stabilization. As you recall, the electric department not only covered our street lights and the town's electric bill, but they also gave the town $31,000, which we transferred at the special town meeting into the stabilization fund. So we take money out of stabilization here, we put it in here. We're taking more out than we're putting in, but I hope that'll change. And then an allowance for abatements. Obviously, this is an important amount of money as well, because the assessors assess your property. Some people challenge and they succeed and they get abatements. And so total available revenue versus total revenue, that's that minus this, and that's what we come out as. $307,943 would be the projected increase in revenue for next year as of this point. I guess that's where we are. So, questions? Okay.
Are these available online?
Pardon me?
Is this information available online?
No.
Where can we get it?
Here's the issue. It's going to change. And I'm reluctant to put something online that's going to change, because some people will look at it, the change will be made, maybe it'll be unfavorable change, and they'll say, but you told us this, and now you're changing your mind. What is it? Tell us the truth and all that. So until we have a final sheet, and I expect a final revenue sheet when the governor releases his budget the 3rd week in January, because that will have the local aid package. And although it may change a little bit, basically that's what we did for local aid, and we'll have a lot more information. And so then I think it would be appropriate to put it online at that point. I'm happy to give you what I have right now, but I don't think it's really ready for public consumption because it's very preliminary.
But I'm on the advisory board. Having served on an advisory board for 27 years, I recognize that those numbers fluctuate up until the day of the annual town meeting. So, it's nice to even have some figures. I mean,
Frankly, I haven't given it to anybody, including the board of selectmen, because we didn't finish it this afternoon.
well,
As you can say, it's still evolving. So now that we have at least the preliminary draft, happy to share it with people who would like to have a
just
copy.
get a little initial.
Okay. All right.
And
One thing that I would like to point out is before we get too excited about that number going up, keep in mind that our health insurance increase, Worcester County retirement increase, all of those will undoubtedly go up. And we just don't know how much yet, obviously, for those. So we should not start thinking of ways to spend $300,000 quite yet. You know that, I'm
I should have
just
said
saying.
that
Yeah.
because, we say, oh, we got some more money to spend on operations. We also have fixed costs. Fuel prices go up, as Ken said, Worcester County retirement goes up, health insurance goes up, building liability insurance goes up. Don't want to be too optimistic. Shut this off.
Thank you very much.
I want to see. Oh, sorry, I wasn't. Wow. He's still is he doing like a survey? No. He emailed us. Thank you. I just would like to see, and I also would like to put it out there that he talks about those things so the public would know.
And then the next item we have is the audit engagement letter for the FY13 audit.
See a copy of that in your packet.
I know we can have it now.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we accept the engagement letter from Clifton, Larson, and Allen for the fiscal 2013 financial audit, not to exceed $23,000.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion?
Just
Yeah, sure.
for clarification, our auditors, presuming we engage them, have advised that we not skip an audit for fiscal 2013. Likewise, bond counsel has said, in order to restore the town's bond rating, you're going to have to do an audit for fiscal 2013. I would hope that at the fall town meeting that we can add some funds into that account so that when fiscal 2013 is completed, they'll do fiscal 14 and we'll be caught up.
Is there any further discussion? If not, Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Okay. Is that everything, Mr. Administrator?
Yes, it is.
Okay. The next item that we have is Mrs. Miller, the Templeton Elementary School Building Committee, to discuss reissuing the RFP for land.
I've got friends with me that know more than I do.
Yeah.
I can do that. I'm ready. Go ahead.
So we had a elementary school building committee meeting last week, I believe. It was an emergency meeting to talk about some information we had prior to going to the 20th meeting where we would review our feasibility study with MSBA. And at that meeting, we took a vote to kind of take a pause with moving forward just at the moment and think about going out and doing an RFP for land. I'd like to turn over to the OPM, John Winokur, and he can kind of probably explain in more detail and answer your questions about why we're moving in this direction. We're taking a sidestep, I think it would be.
Hi, everyone. John Whitaker from Strategic Building Solutions, the OPM for the project, working with the state, the MSBA, Mass School Building Authority, as well as the town on this project. I think everyone is well aware that the parcel of land on Route 202 was identified to be transferred from the state for the sole purpose of building an elementary school. That was a decision that you all made, and so we've had a team of land surveyors, wetland scientists, geotechnical engineers looking at it and trying to understand the parcel of land to see how buildable it was, or it is, and also we had some independent cost estimators develop some cost estimates to see how much it would cost to develop that parcel of land. It is a terrific parcel. It's very nice that it's an option before you, but the prices that came in, frankly, were quite high, higher than most folks expected. and it seems like a good idea at no cost to just go out in the public arena with an RFP and to see what other parcels might be available to you that ideally would have significantly less costs to develop, even given the fact that you might have to pay some money to buy that parcel of land. So you've got a good bit of information already at your disposal. This is simply a process to just see what your other alternatives might be.
Thank you very much. Does anyone from the board have any questions? Yes, sure.
I would certainly like to see us take a second look at the land where the highway is. I know prior, we looked at the land that's behind the highway, which has, it's like 15 acres back there, but it has a fair amount of wetlands. If we actually moved the highway department somewhere else, and that whole parcel that it's on plus the 15, I think would be an ideal location. I mean, it's close to the regional school, so for facilities, it's a good location. I really think we should look at the feasibility of doing that.
So that's town-owned land, right? All
That's
the
correct,
town-owned
right,
land.
so we own that,
And I
so we'd have to
think we
relocate.
probably have some of that in the old files. We still have all the files of all the town-owned land that we looked at, and so we can certainly take another look at those options.
Right, I could be wrong, but I believe when you looked at it before, though, it was not to move the highway, it was to use the land behind the highway.
I think you're right.
So
I think you're right.
I would propose that we look at moving the highway somewhere else and using that entire parcel of land for the school.
Okay.
And what did you say that the cost impact that you anticipate for reissuing the RFP would be at this point?
I really don't think there's any cost impact to reissue the RFP. If there were parcels that came to light, if there were some pieces of land that you liked and thought were worth investigating, then we'd get some prices together to evaluate what it might cost to do a survey, to do the wetlands flagging, et cetera.
Would that involve a new feasibility study, or?
Not a new feasibility study. It would involve doing some of that testing on site that's part of the feasibility. The big part of the feasibility cost is going through what's called the educational programming. So the architects meeting with the schools and identifying how many spaces and where the spaces need to be located and how they interact. That part will be usable no matter where the school goes.
Are there any other questions?
Yep. How many times have we gone out for an RFP?
Twice.
And
In 2009.
you're anticipating that we would get something different than we've gotten in the past?
I don't know if you will get anything different.
I mean, there's a lot of wetland here in Templeton.
There is.
And I know some of the parcels before, I haven't even been on the board, were quite pricey, that I was amazed, but,
I
okay.
think part of it is that the site costs were really high on the Rose Hill land, and they're not reimbursable. So the town bears the whole price of the sewer lines and the water. And so we felt like it wasn't really fiscally appropriate for us to move forward without taking a pause. It's been 2 years we've been looking at, a year plus anyhow, looking at this particular site. We don't know what is out there. We don't know what people might want to put forward. So we felt like this made sense to make sure before we went down a road and we haven't spent any of that new money, that we wanted to make sure that we weren't, there wasn't a better land option, that's all.
John, did you have your hand up? Or if you didn't?
No, I'm curious if this site isn't suitable, is there a chance to swap it with the state for something else?
Yeah, it's not, I think it's not that it's not suitable. You can certainly build a great school and have a great location up there. It's just a cost, that it seems like the other options that didn't make sense back several years ago might be financially more better for you from a cost overall to the taxpayers. So again, just to evaluate and see if there really is anything, seems to make sense.
And would that include looking at the Brooks land again?
It might, certainly might. I don't know. We don't know what's out there and what might come about.
I think we should also look at the land from American Tissue that's on this side of the river. There's a parcel on Reservoir Street, and people are, saying, oh, it's too close to the treatment plant. But the treatment plant has been upgraded, and if you look at where Baldwin Elementary is located, it's not that much further away than that parcel of land on Reservoir Street. So at this point, we need to really do all our due diligence to find a parcel of land that's buildable, that has water and sewer, because the infrastructure costs aren't reimbursable.
Is that land, town-owned land? The tissue plant?
Not yet, no.
Not yet, so that would have to, the RFP, that has to come forward to us. We can't go out and pursue anything. We have to, town-owned land we can, but if it's not town-owned, we can't, right? We can't even talk to anybody. We have to wait for the RFP to come back.
And are you looking for a vote from the board to approve this? Is
Yeah,
that necessary?
The town would issue the RFP,
Okay.
not the school department, so I think if you vote in favor of reissuing the RFP, then it'll be issued out of our office and go on to the central register.
Oh. Yes, John?
I just wanted to ask Julie if she knew how big is that parcel, Julie? What you're talking about, you got any idea?
The one you're talking about?
Is 13, yeah. The one that abuts from the fence up,
Yeah, just
Right.
under 15 acres.
yeah.
How big is it?
15 acres.
15 acres.
15?
Yeah, 15.
Yeah, 1.5.
1.5, yes, not 50.
We don't hear good down this side.
I know.
Are there any other questions from the board before? If not, I will take a motion. Oh, yeah, sure, sorry, Chair Clark.
Just going back with what Doug said, for those of you who don't know, I'm the chairman of that committee, and what Ms. Whitaker said, it's no secret. I mean, the site development cost for our so-called free land was upwards of $7 million. So basically, that site really, it means nothing. Thank you, but no thanks, is my personal opinion. You know I'm the chairman of that committee. I'm not going to try to sell the townspeople a big load of crap, because that's what it is, $7 million worth of site work. There was a lot of other parcels out there. There's other ones that I know have become available since the last RFP has been out. So I think we will probably get some attractive parcels. But going back to what Doug said on the highway barn, one of the criteria we're going to try to go was it 10 to 20 acres, we said, moved on at the meeting? Minimum size lot?
Right.
10 to 20 acre parcels. And this is going to be contingent on the school vote passing. So if, say, somebody comes in, pick a number, somebody comes in at $1 million price tag, it's going to be tied to the school, one lock, stock, barrel price. So it's not like the town has to buy the parcel and then, you know, whichever way the vote goes, hinder whether you use it or not. But going back to the highway barn, it's, let me correct me if I'm wrong, but the town's going to submit a bid to this. That's a commercial piece of property. The town's going to have to assure the school, but everybody, the other part of the town, so to speak, that number one, the relocation cost, are you going to try to tie the relocation cost into the new elementary school? And what about the phase 1, phase 2, and I'm guaranteed a phase 3 environmental cleanup of the highway barn? Between all the salt petroleum and everything that's been going on over there for, I don't know how long, 30, 40, 50 years.
Those would be my questions.
So be very careful when you say, let's put it there, because that alone is going to have so many hidden costs. The feasibility study can't handle that. In other words, the town would have to do that on its own separate empty budget and put it in time. So me personally, I just don't know how the highway department parcel could be a viable piece unless the town is going to guarantee, the town's going to guarantee the town that they're going to sell them a clean piece of land and keep the project moving forward.
And the new location
And the location to guarantee it to move forward. So it's basically, the town doesn't have the time or the source or the funds, I don't believe, my personal opinion, to entertain the highway department parcel for that reason.
Is there anything else from the board?
Just
Yep,
out of
sure.
curiosity, what happens to the state parcel now if we don't build on it? Does the town still, is the town
We don't
going to own that, or is it going to revert back?
Well, the legislation's already passed. And I
Right.
think it would just
It's
stay
tied to us
there.
using it as for a school. We don't use it for a school, it basically, we don't hold, we
It
don't have
just
the whole
stays
deed to
the
that
way it
parcel.
is.
It stays-
Well, that's what I was asking.
Yeah, no,
Right, well, that's the other thing, the
Mr.
agricultural.
Brewer, and Ms. Goldie, when you register to vote next month, you are, you're gonna pay $10,000 an acre of that.
I just-
You gotta give up-
Somebody explain that, I don't know what he's
Okay.
saying.
What they giving us?
Just,
And
yeah, Mr. Caskey here, yes.
Can I explain that? What he's saying is there's agriculture land that we're required to replace. Now, we could have town-owned land that we could replace and make it agriculture land, but Kirk and others did an exhaustive search to do that, and we can't replicate that land. So there's 10 acres, and right now, the only solution we have to acquire that 10 acres is $10,000 an acre. So he's right. In addition, there's bow hunting that's on that property, and we'd have to figure out a way to compensate the bow people, and I don't remember who they were.
Even though it was a gift, I mean, Senator Brewer, thank you very much, but every other state agency's got their hand in it, and if their hands out, they're making it feasibly impossible.
Okay, so, I'm sorry.
Financially impossible.
Somebody,
For us to move forward with Pro Hill.
what is it going to cost us? I'm confused.
We
Well,
don't
development
know.
costs are the actual site cost itself, the actual excavating, installing the road utilities. That's roughly, John, was it $7 million?
No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm sorry. John asked what would happen if we just don't do this. Am I hearing there's cost involved?
No.
Okay, so that's what I need to...
okay.
No.
I'm completely confused about this $10,000 an acre. We have to pay that?
If you
we
use.
build.
It's
If we build.
Oh, if we build.
If we
Okay,
build.
thank you.
Okay, yeah, no, we don't have to pay for it. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's what
I'm
I-
like,
yeah.
okay, so what's the point here? Okay, got it.
Do I have a motion from the board to reissue an RFP for land to build a new Templeton Elementary School?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion from the board? If not, Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. The next issue that we have is the forming of an economic development committee. Is Mr. Eaton here? Yes. Thank you for coming today. Hi.
No problem. Hi. I'm here at your invitation. So maybe the letter brought this some discussion, but colleagues, anything else hanging out?
Oh, if I could have everyone in discussion, please come down. I'm sorry, we're having trouble hearing up here, sorry.
So I wrote a letter on, from a resident's point of view, in late July to you folks asking and imploring if you were to move forward with some economic development opportunities in the town. I see on the agenda it says my name and my agency here, and that's fine. I can answer questions wearing the business hat, but I did write a letter originally as the resident. So, but I'm here at your invitation. I think you had a great discussion. I saw the article in mid-August about economic development and forming a committee, but I'm here at your invitation tonight. So if you have questions, I'm here to answer if possible.
I think at our recent meeting, there was a discussion of forming a committee to advise the town whether to pursue an EDIC or whether to look at redevelopment authority or some other vehicle for this. Also note that the governor just signed an economic development initiative that might have some value for the town, particularly, I think, with cleanup of contaminated properties.
And I believe, if I'm recalling correctly, that we had put it on the agenda to actually hold the actual vote. Is that correct, as to whether or not to form the committee or to put out the word that we would be looking for a committee and what the composition of that committee would be so that we could publicize that on the town's website and through the television to anyone that may have an interest in serving as a citizen at large on that committee. Does anyone have any opinion or comment about how many people, what the composition of that committee they think should be, or?
Personally, I don't think we should have any more than 5.
Yeah.
Once committees get, you get 7, 8, 9, 10 people on a committee, nothing gets accomplished because there's, just not enough people and there all the time, and it's just, issues. So I think no more than 5. We can't really afford to hire any professionals at this point, so it's basically going to have to be a citizens committee. I don't know if Bob would be interested in participating or not. He's not, he's got his plate full too, so.
Do we feel that we would like to have an advisory board member, or a select board member, and the rest citizens at large, or should it be a purely citizen board with maybe Bob as a
person?
I was going to say moderator, that's not what I'm looking for. It's like a kind of an advisor to help where help may be needed.
I think that we should be looking for people with some background and expertise not necessarily, like, the advisory board by bylaw can't be in.
Oh, that's true, right.
All right. I don't know if somebody here, Diane's had some experience in real estate, obviously. I don't know if Doug's had some background in business. I don't know.
Yeah, but not really in economic development. You know, I mean, I'm almost, because like Bob said, we need to make a determination of which one of these two ways we're going to go. So perhaps what we should look at is perhaps a committee of three that will make that decision. And then once we make that decision, you know, then perhaps expand to, you know, what's our actual process going to be. But somebody needs to look at the pros and cons of those two methods and make a determination which one is going to be the best for Templeton.
No, I think that might be,
Yeah.
And
So-
I think,
sorry, go ahead.
Glenn might disagree with me, but I think it's key that we have somebody with some financial background. Just the process of development, a lot of it depends on your funding and what's available, and having a knowledge of that, I think, is key to the whole situation here.
If I may, that's a good, I wouldn't disagree with you, John. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't, but we can always shake hands later, which I love about talking to you. But that's the very good point. Finance, real estate, business, experience with economic development, public sector, private sector people is typically the makeup of those types of committees.
do we want to limit it to citizens in Templeton? I believe that's what our new policy and procedure were. If there was perhaps someone who owned a business in Templeton but didn't live in Templeton and may have some input, they could always, obviously the meeting would be open to the public, they could always come to participate as kind of an individual just, you know, of the public that's there to provide whatever assistance they can. So does it sound like we're thinking of maybe a 3-member board made up of citizens that have experience in business, maybe with Bob being available to provide guidance when necessary?
Yeah. I would make that motion.
Okay. Yep, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second. Is there any further discussion from the board? If not, Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. If you could put the word out there about our meetings, whether the website or a special little section, you know, little on the TV channel, just letting people know that we are looking for, maybe if we know of any citizens who may have an interest in business that may be able to, some experience, participate. And obviously, I just want to say too, but obviously, I may be wrong, but any advisory board member that had an interest, that's a citizen, could still serve as a citizen. They wouldn't be serving as a member of the advisory board. They would just be serving as a
I don't
citizen.
think that's the spirit of the bylaw, no. If you're a member of the advisory board, you can't be a member of another committee.
It's not going to happen.
Glenn, is there any technical assistance available that would help us get this off the ground?
Yeah, to put the day job hat on at MRPC, we receive federal economic development administration funds. We provide technical assistance to communities and forming communities and how to implement economic development activities, planning and development. Yes. So
Is that something Glenn would help with? Because I didn't.
Yeah, that would help us get it off the ground.
Glenn, is that something that you would, I didn't have the privilege of seeing the letter that you wrote
Okay.
as a citizen, but is that something that you would do on a professional level?
If you
Here,
have an
or
MRPC
are you-
request, we'll
We
deliver a
would-
service to you. If
Oh,
you're asking
okay.
me what I would do, I'm not sure if I would be on the committee or not. I just don't know. I wrote a
Okay.
letter imploring the town to move forward because I guess I live across the street from Temple Stewart, and it's been 20 years since
Mhm.
I've lived there, and it's been vacant for longer than that. And I thought, geez, let's do something. So that's why I wrote the letter, quite frankly.
Right. I'd like to thank you for
Yeah, definitely.
starting this. This kick-started the discussion, and hopefully it will be a fruit.
I missed it.
Thank you for having the discussion.
No.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item that we have on the agenda is to discuss the letter from the Attorney General's office regarding an open meeting law complaint. I won't go into too much exhaustive of detail because I'm not 100% sure if the appeals period has expired on the, but obviously the complaint is public. So there was an open meeting letter complaint that was filed by Daniel Keeney against the board. The Attorney General has investigated the matter and has concluded that the board did not violate the open meeting law. We now consider the complaint addressed by this determination to be resolved. So at this point, the Board of Selectmen will be taking no prior action, obviously, unless there is some appeal filed or something along Okay, the next issue on the agenda is the Sewer Commission, the Pleasant Street Pump Station Client Services Agreement. And I believe that the Sewer Commission is not in attendance because, I don't know, Bob, if you wanted to speak on that at all, or...
I got a message asking if they wanted to, if we thought that they should be here, and I received an email back from the chair and said he didn't think it was necessary, so I warned them off.
Okay. So we're continuing to look at that matter?
Yes.
Okay. Next is the police chief, Mike Bennett.
I'm sorry. We did follow up and send a letter to town council requesting an opinion regarding the issue that was discussed last time.
Okay. So the matter is moving forward. It just doesn't require any further action from us at this time. So now I will have the police chief. The first, and you can discuss them in whatever order you'd like, the parking violation fees, or to discuss the issues with the Furno School closing.
Let's do the parking fees first, because I think that'll be quicker. Do you have a handout for everybody on the parking fees?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Officer Smith of my department took it upon himself to start reviewing the parking fees that we have in town. And I gave him the go-ahead. He contacted the town clerk. You'll see the top letter there. His address on the board in that letter. He had reached out to the town clerk. The town clerk said that even though we had adopted Chapter 40, Section 22, she was unclear if it gave the board the authority to increase the fees. Doing a little bit of research myself, if you go to the town bylaws in 1987, I believe it was Section 8, we actually repealed all of the traffic rules and regulations in the town bylaw. In 1988, they effectively made the Templeton traffic rules and orders. In that, under Chapter 40, Section 22, the town or the Board of Selectmen do have the authority to regulate the fees pertaining to parking. If you look at the form, our fees for Templeton compared to Gardner and Winchton, just an example, parking on the sidewalk, crosswalk, we're at $5 and they're both at $15. Their fees are considerably more, some 3 times to 4 times to 5 times more than what we're doing right now. Parking within a designated handicap spot, we have a $50 fine, whereas Gardner and Winchton have $200 fines. I would suggest that the board take action that we look to increase our fines to bring them into line with the other towns in our area.
One thing just from looking at this that I will say, I think that most of the fines are $5. And I don't think that for many people, $5 is enough of a penalty to encourage them to change their behavior. And we're obviously losing money because it costs more much more in administrative costs. It would be better to just get rid of those parking fines altogether than to only charge $5 because we're wasting, police officers' time in processing those when they maybe have other things they could be doing if it's not going to be either a revenue source or people are going to keep doing because it's a $5 fine. So. Yes.
How much money did we bring in?
I wouldn't know off the top of my head. I know that we do have an aggressive campaign in town for parking during winter bans and also for some businesses in towns where people visiting them decide that they want to park wherever they please, and it causes some issues.
Does anyone else have any comments? I personally think that probably the amount of the parking fees and fines should be increased. The exact amount, whether we want to be the same as Gardner and Winchton or just double them to 10, because, even though it's $5, that's still a 100% increase in the amount. Personally, I think I'd like to take this kind of under advisement. Maybe if we could find out how much revenue is we collect from these fees and to see if it would be worthwhile to look at this and maybe just kind of take it under advisement to our next meeting. Would anybody have a problem with that?
No,
Is that okay? Yep, that's great. Okay, thank you.
The next issue was a concern of mine over a year and a half ago. And it's been brought to my attention many times since becoming chief. Residents have come to my office or approached me in the community about the closing of the Templeton Developmental Center. What is the impact going to be to the community? I really don't think that anybody in town actually knows what that's going to be. And it hasn't been made public. The state has contacted the Light Department about taking over their infrastructure. The Light Department is going to take it over, but that makes sense. They supply the electricity that goes up there. The Water Department was approached also. The Water Department said no, unless you make upgrades to your system. The Highway Department was almost forced, or tried to be forced, to take the main road, the Freight Shed Road, as a town road and be held for plowing and sanding. Mr. Chase has fought that and said that it is not a town road, and we are not going to take any action on that, seeing that you are not taxpayers. Now we come to a very important issue, which is my concern, which was also voiced to me just last week, is what is the safety concerns for the community once they close and they have no security themselves. I was informed about a year and a half ago from Chief Jackson that upon the closing of the school, when they go into the residential buildings, the Templeton Police Department would be responsible for all calls of service. That has not officially been forwarded to us. They're currently building 3 residential homes up there. They can house anywhere to 6 to 8 clients. The clients are shifting in their makeup from just mentally handicapped or challenged to more of a mentally handicapped, challenged, violent sexual behavior deviant. We have received no information about how these individuals are going to be placed up there. Also, I will give you an example of one residential house that we have in town on Riverside Road. From July 1st of last year to June 30th of this year, we responded to 89 calls for service to that one house. That one house only has 3 clients.
Oh, my God.
So I would implore the board to reach out to the state to get exactly what this impact is going to do to our community. And I'm not sure what Chief Laporte has for input on this, but
This has been something that has concerned me for a long time. Part of the legislation for closing the Fernald School included Templeton having a visioning committee that has never met. It was supposed to be comprised of a member of the union up there, and it never took off. It never got anywhere. We, as a community, as a town, get 0 information. When you have to read in the newspaper about a client who was pushed against something and ended up dying, and we have no idea what's going on until you read it in the paper. You know, when you have a client who, went out for a ride and then escaped and is picked up in Leominster, we're not notified. There is I think, a major public safety issue in Templeton. Something has fallen through a major crack, and there's no communication. We're the Board of Selectmen. I've been on this board for the longest out of all these members. No one has ever approached the board about taking over any roads up there. Ever. It's a large piece of property. We do not have the equipment. They pay nothing in taxes and have paid nothing in taxes for 130 years. It's an unfunded mandate, and it's a loophole that we really need some answers on. We need a task force or something. I don't know how else to address it, because we're just kept in the dark, and it's going to hurt our people, not just the residents, but our police officers, our fire, our rescue, our highway workers. It's going to affect a lot of people. And these are our employees, and I think they deserve answers as well as we.
Do we know when that transition to the full transition for that facility is supposed to take place, or it's kind of an ongoing?
Construction was backed up, I believe, on the sites with the septic systems, but they're going full bore right now, so I would anticipate within the next couple of months or so.
Yes.
Chief, do you anticipate that opening those three, is that going to impact your staffing?
Yeah.
Well, let's put it this way, if they have so-called workers there to take under control these individuals that are coming in that are more violent, I would see that these individuals aren't going to want to deal with them, the same as 15 Riverside Road, and we're going to get caught.
And the other question I had is there going to be a need for your staff to have any type of additional training to deal with that type of population?
No. Training-wise, no. It's just going to be time-consuming and take away from, we're still going to be one patrolman short, even after I hire my next guy. The night shifts will be staffed fully. However, if we've got to keep responding up there, and I can only go back, to give you an example, I can only go back to when Cottage Hill Academy had all their individuals till they spaced it out. When that facility used to get out of control, we used to have to call in Gardner, Winchendon, everybody to come help us resolve this. I don't know what the impact is going to be where they're so close together. They're right on top of each other. I don't know if one client going out of control is going to cause others to go out of control.
Yes, ma'am.
We really don't know what they're building, what they're doing up there, because they're not required to pull permits, to inform us what they're doing, when they're doing it. You know, because it's the state, they have to do whatever they want, whenever they want.
Luckily, it's an election year, so it might be a good opportunity to kind of put pressure on those who represent us, because as the mandate comes from Beacon Hill, it might be a good time to put pressure on those who represent us on Beacon Hill, or want to represent us on Beacon Hill, to assist us in getting answers where we have not been given answers so far. So this might be a good time, I guess is my point, to approach this now, quickly, before that kind of impetus is lost. But yes, ma'am.
When Ray Jackson retires, I don't know of anyone else that's going to have a bloodhound. And they have a bloodhound to track guys when they leave. The guy that was found in Leominster, I was told by a staff member that they have 2 people watching him 24 hours a day because he keeps leaving. If he leaves, they don't call our police force. And I don't think that's safe. I heard that they have a new client coming in that, excuse me, that needs 4 people 24 hours a day. And the staff is sick of it and beat up. So I think if they're going to have a facility that they can't really control, they need a fence, and they need to stop fooling people into thinking that this group home thing is working, because they're not, the staff wasn't trained to take care of people that were anything but mentally
Challenge, right.
And that whole thing has changed, but the staffing hasn't changed.
Yeah, John.
Going back to the Freight Shed Road, doesn't town meeting have to accept the road before we can?
Well, when they got rid of the county government, Worcester County government, they just gave us back Royalston Road.
Okay.
In deplorable condition. The town didn't have a say in it. They just dumped it back on us. Even though it's a numbered state highway, it was an old county road. It's an unfunded mandate. We're just getting hit left and right with unfunded mandates with no accountability. I mean, where do you go? Where do we go as a town? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I don't know who's going to do it, but somehow we have to put together some itemization of all the costs associated with the state moving and how they're going to help us mitigate those costs.
Particularly while cutting local aid at the same time.
Well, yeah,
They-
I
no,
mean...
they cut our
I
local
mean,
aid and,
Like, for instance, like the chief said, if we get one cop on duty and he's up at the Pearl School, what's happening in East Templeton?
Yes, Mr. Council?
Building is six new houses, like, six houses. What are they gonna do with the remaining buildings there? And on the other side of the road, the brick buildings? They aren't telling you that. They tell us people that, are they?
They can't do it.
What are they doing? What are they gonna do with them? They can rip them down.
Yes.
I was up there a couple months ago trying to, basically what Julie had said, there was, what about this committee, and bridges committee, that was passed. Well, they've been meeting for years and, no one from the town ever came. The state's been lying to us since the first day they came in 5 years ago and said, oh, we can't be closing. Because they tell us what we want to hear and they don't show us what we want to see. It's plain and simple. There's a lot of huge problems. Number one, if they force the road on us, I'm going to go to town floor and make a motion, we discontinue and abandon the road. I mean, simple things like that. If they want to throw it at us, we're going to throw it right back at them. I'd like to ask the chief, we have so many basically sexual predators, court-appointed sex offenders and whatnot. Are they registering with the police department like they're supposed to when they come into town? Do we even know who's up there?
As far as I know, in the past, they have registered